Now, you've probably heard about folks like Wyatt Earp, Jesse James, Doc Holliday, and Wild Bill Hickok. Legends of the frontier whose stories are known all over the world. The Old West is full of tales about courageous men and women who helped shape the country. But this isn't another tall tale about some make-believe, pistol-packing paragon of justice wandering the territory looking for another wrong to right. No, the story you're about to hear is about three men who are by no means saints, but often found themselves in aid of those who could not stand up for themselves. Brave and often ruthless men who traversed the territories, leaving a trail of death in their wake. This is the story of three brothers. This is the legend of the Brothers Phloater.
So, welcome to a discussion about the legend of the Brothers Phloater. I'm Travis Box. I'm the guy that plays Phil Phloater. With me, I have James Robinson and Danny Hedham. James plays Frank Phloater, Francis, and Danny plays Fart Phloater, Bartholomew Phineas Phloater.
Thank you.
And today we're sort of going to talk to you about how this whole thing came to be and some thoughts on just the characters and the story, and we might hint at some directions that we may want to go, but really just sort of give you a background on how this happened. And I will tell you, it kind of happened organically and almost by accident. So, James, why don't you tell them what started this before, like the very inception of the Phloater brothers?
So
because it goes back a ways.
This is a long, the story of the Phloaters goes back to 2018. When Travis and I, who were working at a radio station at the time, we were working together, and we were spending our mornings, because we both worked on the morning show. He was the producer, I was the engineer, and we would spend our mornings just making each other laugh. And that turned into having us host a sort of a telethon type of deal. And what we did was we put together all these funny skits and things from so many of the ideas that we had just making each other laugh. And from there, it ended up turning into a regular weekly show. Well, during that time, we would make all these skits, and one of the skits was Travis came up with the idea for a craft brewery.
Right. And the reason because of this, so we're based out of Portland, Oregon.
Yep.
And Portland, Oregon has a river that runs through it called the Willamette River. If you're out of state, it may look like the word says Willamette. It's pronounced Willamette. But the Willamette River was also known for anytime we'd have heavy rains, we'd get sewage overflow directly into the Willamette River. So there was always poop in the river anytime there was heavy rains, and in Portland it rains a lot. So it was kind of a known thing. And we're also one of the brewery capitals of America, right?
Yeah, for a
We've
long
been
while,
known for Beervana was the term. So we had all these craft breweries, and I thought it would be really funny to create this fake craft brewery that used unfiltered Willamette River water, and the joke was there was sewage in it, right? It was poop water. So we called it the Phloater Brothers because there were things floating in the river.
The logo the slogan was the one with the P.
Right, because we spelled Phloater PH instead of using the F. So,
which is ironic, and I don't know that you gave this much thought, but pH for the balance of the water.
Correct. That was totally accidental. But anytime that we would use an F, we switched it out for pH. So, and the characters, the two brewers were brothers.
Yep.
And it was Phil and Francis, PH, Phloater, PH, and we made. I don't know if you youngins. Back in the 90s, we were obsessed with something, and late 80s, early 90s, we were obsessed with wine coolers. And there was a specific commercial for a brand called Bartles and James. And I kind of modeled our brothers after the Bartles and James. They were very soft-spoken, very matter-of-fact about their wine coolers. So we kind of took that, and we made what? Probably 7 or 8 different commercials for different
Every
brews.
holiday there was a different...
Like there were holidays, yeah. But we always did the same kind of deadpan thing. And really it was one big poop joke or pee joke, right? It was
just something disgusting.
It was just
because
gross.
some of the beers we came up with
nasty.
were foul.
And while it probably never hit well with the audience, James and I adored it. Like it was one of our favorite. It made us laugh, so we just kept doing them. And so so we had these brothers. So then comes along Red Dead Redemption 2, and they've perfected the online. Now, Red Dead Redemption
is a great game.
It's a video game that was produced by Rockstar. It's a Western. The first one is probably one of the best Western video games ever made.
Oh, hands down.
And Red Dead 2 comes really close. But again, they perfected the online play and we had decided that we were going to play online together. And what was the point of our posse?
Because I had been playing it for a while, and about this time I got both of you guys geared up so we could all play together. And we had been talking about it for a while because I had played it about a year, maybe 2 years by this point. And I loved it. It was fun, but it was boring by myself. I got into a position where I could get you guys consoles, games, get you all set up, and we decided, hey, we'll ride as the Phloater brothers because they had in the game a sort of a technology tree where you could become a moonshiner.
Yep.
And we thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun to be moonshiners? But now we have the history of the craft brewery for the funny commercial that no one cares about, but it makes us laugh, so we're the Phloaters. And that's about the time that this one over here decided to roller skate and break his leg.
Okay, so fair play. When you hooked me up with the game, it's been a running joke in my household that my wife always calls me Fart. It's just a thing, F-A-R-T. And so when I fired up the game and I was on the character creating menu and you guys were just sitting there, it's like, oh, that's right. I'm going to be a Phloater brother. So I'm going to be Bartholomew Phloater. Bart Phloater.
Which had us cracking up.
Right. And it was just perfect. It worked so well. And it was like, okay, that's just who I am. So I made my character and I started going around and I was trying to get used to my triggers. And, just the operations of the game because I hadn't sat down and really played a long format game for a while. And I was just murdering NPCs because I was getting used to the aiming, the whole tracking system, how to do the dead eye, stuff like that. And I killed a pedestrian as they were running by, and both of you two just jumped right down my throat. It's like, Jesus, dude. You're a monster. What is wrong with you? He was just passing by, and I was like,
just one.
No. And here's the thing. So after that first one, I just leaned into it. I was like, he shouldn't have been standing there. He was in my way. And I started making up these excuses why I'm just practicing how to do this game. But no, I just leaned into being a monster. And over a short amount of time, I leaned into it hard. And it's like whenever we'd roll, it's like, okay, let's see how much trouble we can cause in this town.
And it's really funny because Phil and Frank took a while to develop their characteristics. Fart came out almost full-fledged in that one session.
Yeah, he was 100% realized in that one day. And then by the time I had broken my leg and I spent a lot of time sitting on my ass playing video games, I played that one a lot, and I was able to develop my character, his look, his style, his feel, his overall everything, his stats, his stuff, everything about him was customized. And it was like, nope, this is what Fart Phloater looks like all the time. He's rocking purple and black. He's got the shiny silver holsters with the snakes. The boots are all decked out, but his guns are 2 navy revolvers, one jet black, one bright and silver with a pearl handle, and it's ebony and ivory. And it was just like, well, yeah, of course this is my guy. Duh.
And when we decided to do this online and do the Phloater Brothers, I had this silly idea. So if you're not a game player, you don't probably have not heard the term griefer. If you are a gamer, you know exactly what they are, but they tend to be players in an online game who go around causing grief. They will, for no reason, come up and try to shoot you or mess with what you're playing, and they're generally not fun to be around because they mess up the flow of your game and they get in the way. And I always had this idea of forming this giant posse, which you can do in the game, where you can form these groups,
real big groups of people together.
That we were going to the Phloater Brothers, which in the posse form were the Brothers Phloater. Once we did it Old West, we're going to be almost like vigilantes.
Yeah,
they were not law by any means. They were not sworn. They did not wear a badge, but we were going to police the game and go after griefers.
And
like
we did
if we
a few
saw
times. Yeah.
We did. We got better at it, and we did. But
we had a lot of fun because there was a couple instances where we'd be spread out hunting or something, and Danny got griefed, and he'd call out, and this poor griefer or his buddies were just waiting for Danny to show up, and then here come the other 2 floaters.
Yeah.
And at the time...
Oh, I Leroy Jenkins right into the line of fire.
Yeah,
they always griefed the fuck out of me.
And Rockstar at that time started handing out explosive and incendiary bullets.
Oh, yeah.
And Travis
So
is not good with pistols.
No, not at all.
So this is where one of Phil's characteristics came. Because you got yourself a pair of sawed-offs.
And wore them in holsters as sidearms. So my two, and then I got, I would craft the incendiary and the explosive shells. And so one would carry ones that the shells would blow things up, and the other would be shells that set things on fire, plus just the shotgun rounds itself. So, and so I would carry these two sidearms of shotguns, and I named them Fire and Brimstone because, again, Old West, and it made sense. The joke became, because I never knew which one was which, that I would just fire, and sometimes I'd blow stuff up, sometimes I'd set it on fire, and you guys were like, "Why'd you use that round?" And I'm like, "Does it matter?" Right? It worked.
Yeah, many times we would chase off griefers because they would try and hit us back hard, but we would come in force. Couple
and
times
then I'd set them on fire and blow them up.
Most of the time, of the handful of times that we faced griefers, I think we ran them off.
Yeah, because I remember one time we had pinned them down in their encampment, and basically we had them locked in there. They stayed there because they were safe, and it's like we just kept circling around and just keeping them in that spot. It's like, cool, I hope you enjoy your game, fuckers, because you ain't leaving your camp.
Nope.
Because in the
otherwise
game,
we're going to blow your ass up.
You can't shoot out.
You can't shoot out, and you can't shoot in. So it's like we couldn't hurt them, they couldn't hurt us.
But we were just far enough as soon as you stepped out.
Oh, game on. But they wouldn't leave camp, and then they eventually
just
disappeared.
Left,
and it's like, oh, good. I'm glad you figured it out, numbnuts. Yeah, because that was the other thing. I was never a griefer against players because I don't really care. I'm not going to mess with your game. It's your game. You do you.
Yeah.
I was absolutely an NPC griefer. Like, I was a homicidal monster.
If it was an NPC,
just done. It became really difficult to fulfill bounties without killing them.
So many times when we were playing together, there was one instance we were in if you're familiar with the game, you're in the town of Valentine, and old fart just unleashes, and it ended up with the three of us on the roof of a building, pegging off lawmen as they would come into town, and our wanted level just kept getting higher and higher and higher and higher.
I think that was when
like
I was
to a point where it's like, okay, this is a lot of money that we have to pay.
I feel like that was one of those ones where I was posted up in the hotel and you guys were up on the roof, so you guys had the vantage, and I was just cleaning them out as they were coming through the door. And it was like, bring it on. I got more bullets. Let's go.
That particular session and a few other things led primarily to where we are now. And one of those things was the introduction of the show. Travis introduced me to the show Deadwood, which if you have not seen it, is an amazing show about a town in South Dakota.
Real town, Deadwood, South Dakota.
Which I've been to. It's
fictionalized.
Does not look like
fictionalized retelling with real people that were in the town. So
historical fiction.
Yeah, exactly. But it's the show. What's really cool about the show is, and let's go a little English lit here. The dialogue was written in iambic pentameter, which is how Shakespeare wrote all of his stuff. It was iambic pentameter. So it was
spoiler alert, we're never going to do our dialogue in the show.
No. We are. But
challenge not accepted.
Not accepted.
Deadwood, even though it was raw and filthy and had language and was just the dialogue, the way that it was performed, it just stood above all these other shows, these westerns and everything. So I had been a fan since it was on originally. Like I was into it when it first broke, and I loved the show. And finally I got James to watch it, and he fell in love with it too. I mean, he saw the dialogue and the interactions and everything.
The dialogue, the casting, the location, like everything about it was like
swag. Hang tight, woo. Hang tight.
So, but I was watching it one night, and some of the characters were having this problem, and I was just, the day before we had been playing Red Dead, so Phloaters were, and I looked at my wife and went, this town would be a lot better if the Phloaters just rode through once. And for some reason,
it'd be a lot more dead and a lot less wood.
Depends on what part of town you're in.
Burnt to the ground and dead.
But it got me thinking about old pulp novels and westerns in general. And I just thought, I bet I could write a western with the Phloaters. Now, we had just finished our last audio drama called Homestead, and it was 4 seasons, and we were supposed to start our 5th season, but I had hit a major writer's block. I didn't know what to do, where to go. We had kind of a general outline laid out, but I think I was just kind of burnt.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to take a break. I'm going to take a year off and just kind of focus on other writing projects. And immediately started with the idea of 3 short stories put together into one novel. And each story would be about a specific brother. And I got the first chapter done. I wrote it literally in like 4 hours. I wrote it. And I sent it over to Travis, and I was like, hey, should I keep doing this, or is this, am I...
What did I do?
Travis goes, well, let's add a bunch of stuff right in the middle. And I read what he had written. He was like, I don't want to mess anything up, and if you don't like it, fine.
But here's the fat of the center section that you were completely missing.
And basically all he did, because all it was I had written the introduction of the brothers based on our Valentine adventure.
Yeah.
Where the story opens, where Fart has killed everyone in the bar, and Phil is really upset because now he's got to pour his own whiskey.
Because he killed the bartender. Damn it.
He was looking at me cross-eyed.
Yeah, whatever. Sneezed.
And Frank comes running in, and that was the setup of the first chapter. And then I was like, I'll do some background. Well, Travis set it up by writing this sort of soliloquy about the brothers, and from there I was able to transition into their history, give a rundown of who they are, and from there it just took off. And I titled it Miss Catherine Morgan and the Strawberry Inferno. And the idea was that each story would focus on the love of the brothers' life and the tragedy that took that love away.
Yeah, and at that rate too, I mean, that was a neat little concept, because I never really thought about casting other fictional characters in the world necessarily, other than us, because we exist, we were just a thing. So it was kind of cool to have the concept of, we created this whole homestead that although the building I think exists.
The building and the
It's just
location
not-
in Homestead, everything is real. It's just all fictional characters and
Yeah.
fictional
And
world.
it's being run by somebody rather than just being a dead drop to find random loot.
Yeah.
But that was kind of the cool thing about it. And it was like, and we started, once you started sending some of the first drafts of stuff, it was like, oh shit, Phil's actually a person. He actually has a history. And
Well, it was
some of it
interesting
we
'cause-
don't talk about.
Because
We'll get there.
Yeah. it was not there. It wasn't intended to be an audio drama. It wasn't until I brought the first
Yeah.
bit over.
If you're listening
and
at home
you
and
read
putting
it.
2 and 2 and 2 together, yes, this absolutely is Red Dead fan fiction. That is
Oh,
exactly what
100%,
this is. But I will say that that's how it started. And while
Yeah.
even the audio drama is still set in the Red Dead universe, it doesn't feel like that to us.
No,
It's like
yeah.
we use it as our locations and some of the characters and some of the history in Red Dead.
It's the foundation
But
stone
it has
that we
grown
built upon.
really to the story of these three brothers and what they've experienced. So
Yeah.
you could almost take the Red Dead out of it, just put it in a fictional Old West setting. The story doesn't change. It's like, but we love that it's in Red Dead because that's where these characters started. So it made sense to us. But yes, this is fan fiction. This is fan fiction. We're just doing things.
we have
with the
adjusted
guns,
some of the history
the
of
horses,
the
the
Red Dead
branding.
world and the lore.
But I will say,
Now.
as the writer of this, while
Nerd.
it is based in the Red Dead world, I've included a lot of real world stuff in.
Yeah.
And I've done due diligence. I've got a few places I go to is like, well, I want an Old West saying for this. And I will
Right.
look up slang and phrases and stuff. So there was a point where you said Fart mentioned Phil's bib and tucker, which is a phrase for your nice clothes, and so I try and find phrases and things that will make it grounded in that time period. And I also know, and we've had this discussion before, as the world expands, I'm going to include real world cities. We might talk about Deadwood. I don't know that we'll visit Deadwood, but we'll talk about Deadwood. We'll talk about San Francisco. We'll talk about New York. We'll talk about real world places to kind of mix the two.
Well, the nice thing about it too is in the respects that it's like when we do some of the old world dialogue, the nice part about a lot of our dialogue is most of it's pretty timeless. What in the fuck were you thinking?
Yeah.
What? Shit like that.
Yeah.
It's timeless in the respects that, I'm certain, people used it back in the day, but that's the cool part about it. They've become unintentional taglines.
Well, what's also nice too is in doing the research, I found out that Rockstar used real cities. Blackwater is a real city. Strawberry was a real city. Armadillo was a real city. So, I mean, Rockstar's done some of the work for us.
Yeah.
So it's kind of nice that, again, it's set in Red Dead, but it's also set in the real world. So blending the two isn't that hard.
Yeah, I think that now that we've taken it from your initial idea of novelization, right,
Yeah.
and moved it towards more of an audio drama, I think that it is now less fan fiction and more loosely set in a Red Dead world,
Yeah.
right? Because again, we're using certain things from the game still, but you're broadening it outside of that. But what I hope is that people that have played and love Red Dead in that world will come to it and have a familiarity that gets them into the story.
Yeah.
And then after that, they're just hooked by the story because
Yeah.
I think that's where we're at now. It's like we really established a lot of the Red Dead stuff early on just to let the audience know, no, this is based in...
it's a comfort zone.
Right, and it is based out of a video game romanticized version of the Old West that if you've played it, you're familiar with. But once we have you hooked, hopefully, with the story and the background of these brothers and where these brothers might end up, I think that the Red Deadness kind of falls away. It's still there, but it's not, I don't think it's necessary anymore for the story. Like it's,
Yep.
so again, it'll help you get into it if you know the Red Dead world and you love the video games. But it
hopefully it's
isn't
the
necessary.
characters
It
and the
isn't
story that
right.
keeps you there.
And if you've never played the games and you just like a good Western, hopefully you'll love this because it's got that Western feel to it. And one of the things that I'll say is we found a really good balance between humor, action, and drama. Like we generally don't stay too long in one or the other, but they kind of blend. And where Homestead, the audio drama that we did before, it had so many storylines and so much going on that there were episodes that it didn't feel like a whole lot happened because we were really setting it up for the next episode or two episodes down, right? So it almost, and this is not a slam, but it just kind of became almost like a soap opera, right?
Yeah.
It was so many storylines with such a large cast.
It was kind of hard to follow the narrative on who you wanted to follow.
Unless
at that
you
point.
really were hardcore listening. And I think that this one, each
very
episode
streamlined.
feels very, like there's a lot going on in each episode. We pack a lot into 22 to 35 minutes, right?
Yep.
That's about the average episode. But it really, each episode moves. It feels like it's an adventure. We give you a lot in every episode to make you feel like you've been on an e-ticket ride.
Yeah.
And we're still hopefully moving the narrative forward and telling these bigger stories and these bigger arcs of these characters.
So I want to ask each of you, and I'll start with you, Travis, from the inception of Phloater in this form, from us playing to Red Dead to where he is now, how much have you thought about his story? And because I know each of us has a story for the character in our heads, and we've talked about how, they've got, but I want to know individually, how did you make Phil a full-fledged character from the moment we cracked the mics for the first time? Because we'd been talking about this for a while before we did it.
Yeah, I will say, definitely a lot of Phil was born with us playing the video game, because we would actually kind of, for the most part, try to play in character. And Phil being the oldest brother and having to take care of his little brothers, the middle one being you, James, Frank, who is blind. And then
I don't think we've mentioned that.
He is a blind character, but listen to the thing, you'll hear the backstory of that. And then obviously his lovable psychopath littlest brother.
Wow.
He even back when we played the video game, Phil was the oldest. He was kind of the father figure to these two because he had to take care of them and kind of raise them at a young age. He's all business. He's a little tired, just weary, just road weary, and he doesn't suffer fools. I think that as we really started exploring our characters more with the audio drama, we added stuff like, he's a sucker for a pretty lady, somebody classy, somebody in the town. Like and he's really unsure of himself.
Well, it's always
when,
a lady
when
of
courting.
standing too.
Yeah, not
It's
necessarily
never-
the highest standing,
No,
but
but a nicer,
put together, smart.
like if
Kind.
we were, if the Phloaters are poor, he's going for middle class and higher.
Yeah. So his Achilles heel is probably that, middle class or higher.
Or a game of poker.
And I was going to
Strong.
say that was the other thing that we kind of settled on. Again, when we played the game, in the game you can play poker, and I love poker, and we'd sit at the table playing online, and I'd clean house, and it just became more of Phil's thing. That Phil's loves are obviously women of standing, poker. He likes whiskey, but for the most part, he's that stoic working dad, right? It's like, as long as you're honest, you work hard, you fulfill your commitments, you don't break your promises, then that's it. So he really is even as the older brother, he's the father of these three brothers, and kind of plays it that way. It's rough for him to talk about feelings. It's rough for him to display affection. Like, it's all of those things that quintessential father figure,
the standard stoic male.
It's also
persona.
comes from, and this was never discussed. I did this on my own, but once I did it, we all loved the idea. Each brother has a different mother.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And none of them, Phil and Frank, grew up without a mother figure. So being unable to talk about feelings is definitely a Phil thing. Yeah. As the oldest, he's never had a female
and
around
our
long
father
enough.
Or feelings.
And our father was a complete shitheel in this story, right? Yeah. He was not a good father. He was abusive. He was a con man.
Gangster.
Right. Yeah. And he comes to a horrible and fitting end. Again, listen to the podcast. It is a great way. But yeah, so even when Phil was younger, he had to stand up and basically save his little brother because he was born blind and his mother had died in childbirth, and he had to stand up to his father for it. And it set a boundary that the father continued until Fart was born, and then bad ending. And then we basically had to set out on our own, and I had to take care of both of you guys. And so my character, not horribly educated, but knows how to read. He's good with logistics. Like, he's the planner of the group. Like, and he's definitely the guy that the other two brothers will look up to. And it's like, if Phil's cool with it, we're cool with it, right?
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't mean they will not flip Phil shit, because they will. Like, they will argue till they're blue in the face.
It's their favorite game.
But that's the dynamic of these brothers. It's really the way that they show the affection is the shit talking and the getting under the skin and the pranking and all of the stuff that they do. It's their way of saying, I love you, brother. and they have been on the road so long as just these three that this is just the patterns that they have fallen into. So the longer that we do this, the more experience. And I think that arc, my arc, which we've already completed, also solidified a couple of things. And even in the course of those early episodes, 6 episodes, seven. My arc was 7. Yeah. You even see a change in Phil that carries on now throughout the episodes we've done since, and we'll continue to adapt. But there are, I think that Phil had 3 dimensions to him going into this, and we've now just been adding, more and more as facets, the story goes on. But I think he was pretty well established, as we were even starting this, which is good, because that was that first arc. He had to be established pretty quickly because we were going to put him through the ringer quick.
Yeah,
right.
And it gave you guys time really through that arc and then the episodes we've done since to also fill out your characters and give them dimension as your arcs are being ready to.
And that brings me to you, Bartholomew. Again, we said that your character came out almost fully fledged, but in the process of doing this, we've had long discussions
about who he is,
and what we'd like to see him from. So my question to you then is, from the time we cracked the mics the first time till now, how much thought and evolution have you put into Fart's story to the character he is?
Quite a bit, actually, in the respects that, when I created the character in the game, he was, like you guys said, it was pretty much after the joke had stuck, he was pretty well developed for what I was going to play him like. He was the fastest to the gun, quickest way from point A to point B is your death out of my way. And that was simple. It was straightforward. And the nice thing about it is it acted as like a foil for you guys, because you guys were kind of going at it like the Old West movies. It's like you got the stoic one, you got the crack shot, but he's a pacifist who doesn't want to do the thing. And it's like you had that perfect dynamic of the old Western movies where it's like Unforgiven, all of these old movies, the Rio Bravo, things like that, where it was like you had these two characters. And the one thing that Fart created was he was the wild child. He was the odd man. He was the Billy the Kid. He was
Kevin Costner in Silverado.
Exactly.
The
and it
younger
was like,
brother who climbed the jail cell, who couldn't draw fast enough.
But the thing about it is after we had established who he was on his base level, on his surface, everything after that was, I actually started thinking about him a lot more. It's like, no, he's not a simpleton. He's not stupid. He's actually quite intelligent, but he doesn't like to put effort in when he doesn't have to. You could say he's lazy, but I like to think of him as efficient. He is efficient in his ways because he sees the long game in the short term. He knows how to fix a problem that's in front of his face, then he never has to deal with that problem ever again. And if a problem does come out of it, well, shit, that's just more practice for him. And for him, that's okay because he lives life very joyful. It's like he gets to be with his brothers. And so long as he has them, he always feels safe enough to be himself. He always feels comfortable enough. He doesn't have to question anything. I mean, he gets the fucking business from Phil and Frank all the time for good reasons, obviously, because he is partially psychopathic, but it's one of those things where he has this safety net to be who he's going to be. And what he learns from his brothers is a desire for something beyond that. He can see his foresight shifting. Everything isn't as easily solvable, but that's something that is coming very, very, very slowly to him. Whereas like Frank, you picked up on it fairly quick. You guys are already pretty much kin on it. Obviously, Phil had the mastery of like, well, I don't want to be doing this forever because it's not a long old man's game, So he got it. Frank's already on it. Fart is apprehensive about accepting that because at this point in his life, he feels like he is God's gift to firearms.
Right.
And he feels like the Wild West is made better by his presence because he gets rid of assholes. And, people who don't know they're an asshole until they're an asshole. But either way, he is simplistic in that. But again, I've always phrased it that he is like a wound up rubber band. He's been pulling himself stretched tighter and tighter. And the tighter he gets, he just adds a smile and a laugh and a bullet. It's like, so long as he's got that, he can relieve that tension a little bit. But eventually, it's going to pull to a point where he's going to snap and he's not going to know what's going to happen. And a part of him is aware of it, but doesn't want to pay attention to it because, again, he's efficient.
I've always looked at him, too, as whether we remember it in our own lives, because I know we've all been there, or we currently know somebody like this. But I think that Fart encapsulates that invincible, know-it-all youth period, right? Where we think that we've learned enough about adulthood, we know everything about everything, and death seems so long and far away that we feel immortal. And
on top of that, he has an ego.
And I think it's that ego of youth.
It's more than that. Yeah, it's like that's the other side of it. It's like not only does he have the ego of youth, but he also has the ego of mastery because
he's good.
All the people who have come up against him ain't still here to talk about it.
And when we, as the older brothers give him the business,
Oh, yeah.
it isn't because we're just angry. Usually we are because he's messed something up. But really, it's always out of that fear of protection because of the old trope that there's always somebody faster, and you cannot live like this long.
Yeah, and there's no such thing as an old man gunslinger.
Exactly. And he is, as we meet him and currently sort of in the audio drama, he's still down that path pretty hard of he's going to be the first. He's the fastest. He's the deadliest. He's there ain't nobody he's afraid of. He can out. And we constantly caution him, dude, there will be one time when we can't protect you and you go up against somebody faster.
See, and it's funny too for me because when I go into the characters and, we have scenes like the Strawberry Inferno, things like that. The one thing I've noticed about him, and I've tried to bolster up, is when there's business to be done, he is efficient. Mm-hmm. He is cold. He is calculated. He's having a great fucking time.
Giddy.
But that thing that makes him laugh and is happy is tucked behind this professional facade. So much so that every kill just makes it a little bit bigger. And once all the killing's done, it fucking explodes. It's like, holy shit, y'all missed a show. I was on fucking fire. It was great. And it's like it comes out of him post the business. Where people have that moment of remorse after something like that, or they have that breakdown, the adrenaline shoots out of them and they just collapse. Fart ignites because all of that excitement, all that giddiness had been building up behind that professional, mentality just exhaust. And the one thing is, you two are the only reason that he will always stay to some level gregarious and giggly about it, because I always imagined that if Fart was ever on his own, truly on his own, he would become exhausted with himself. He'd become exhausted with the fights. He'd become exhausted with the looking over his shoulder. He'd become exhausted by the fact he had nobody to tell all these great fucking stories to who would listen. And usually when he would tell these stories, he'd probably start a fight with somebody, which would end up in him killing somebody again. So I see this man as understanding well enough that without his brothers, he would get so bored and so pissy and so confrontational that he would be seeking more of a murderous rampage rather than reacting.
Yeah, so you'd lose the lovable side of
real quick.
To that point, he's almost an addict.
Yeah.
I've always looked at him when a fight starts, he gets very happy. He gets giggly. Almost the way an addict when they're high, Yeah.
The
difference is though, I've always felt that somewhere in Fart's mind, there's part of him that hates that he has to do what he has to do.
See, I've
never gotten that. And honestly, for me, what I get from him is less
the part he ignores, but
right. But I always felt like it was less like an addiction. In the regard, I always felt like his reaction to violence was like somebody who puts their arm in a sling and has it across their chest for days. And then when violence kicks off, it's like they're able to take that arm out and stretch it. And it's like, oh, fuck, that feels so good.
Yeah.
Oh, damn it, I miss being able to do this. And that's kind of what it is for him, where it's stretching that muscle. And he finally feels like, oh, this is my zone. I know how to do this. This is where I'm good, because my brothers are good at everything else. I am absolute shit at everything else. But when it comes to the gifts part, I am the best.
And I think what's interesting about what you thought about Fart's character, I think that really suits your character and my character. I think we wish he had that. And I think that it's been our job since we've been taking care of him, right? As the littlest brother, to try and instill that, because he doesn't have it. And it is the key to him, like, surviving this is he needs to understand, and it comes usually from us and life, experience. At some point, he may start to have that. And when he does, that's going to be a really tumultuous time for him.
Well, and again, to that point, I mean, when it comes to that moral compass, that regret, that sadness over whatever, for him right now, it's like using a tool he doesn't understand. You know, it's like if you didn't know what a pair of pliers were, you wouldn't know what the fuck to do with them or how to use them. And for him, he has them. He just doesn't understand it. So what he does is he ignores it and he pushes it out of his head and he moves on. And it's always that thing where it doesn't bother him that he's doing that. He just doesn't understand it. So up until a certain point, you know, I mean, we did have that one offshot episode where
it's the previous episode. We won't spoil it.
No,
but there's a. And what's the name of the episode?
I was actually going to bring it up. So the name of the episode escapes me. But the
this guy wrote it.
the running theme throughout this whole series, and will continue to be, is always actions have consequences. Mm-hmm. You'll hear the brothers say
and evolution.
Yeah,
you'll hear the brothers say it a few times. Actions have consequences, and I think this past episode, you're really seeing the brothers are really seeing it. Yeah, they like to say it, but this. In that episode, it's an instance of their actions have consequences.
Right.
And they're not fully ready to face those things quite yet. And it's forced on them, and it's troubling. So for me as a writer, and then also for me as a listener, it's going to be interesting to see how this starts playing into how they interact with people, how they deal with things moving forward. Because now it's like, look, they're not going to stop and second guess everything. That's just not who they are. But maybe one of them might go, hey, let's rethink that for a moment.
Well, and again, all of the characters are developing in a way that it's like at some level there comes a change. Now, whether it's a hardening, like, you know, again, in certain instances of our past, you know, things that we have done already before even season 1, they have hardened the characters in shapes and capacity. That will not change in the respect.
Phil already has regrets. He understands that there are consequences to actions that he's made throughout his life. So when we meet him for the first time and through this, he's already been through life, man. And it has created this very stoic, all business look. Killing is sometimes necessary, but it is never always the only option. And if you can avoid it, man, future you will be very happy if you can avoid it.
Oh, Phil, don't say that. You're not half bad at it.
See?
Well, look,
but that's the whole thing, is there is a time and a place for it, and that's where Phil is. It's like, it's utilitarian. It is a tool in your toolkit, and if it needs to be done, we're going to be the best at it. But Phil wants to avoid it almost at any cost because he understands that there are consequences.
Yeah. And it was very evident during our first 7 episodes, which was the Strawberry Inferno arc. Phil is constantly reminding both his younger brothers they are not to commit any violence without his express say-so. Frank is okay with it. Fart has trouble with it. Mm-hmm. But again, we've talked about Fart is still in that very much youthful energy.
I also don't like doing what my older brother tells me to do because he's an asshole and fuck him anyway.
He's a father figure and you're at that teenage rebellion.
He don't know me. Yeah,
but I think you're right. I think
Jerry Springwater episode.
Meet Phil's already got major regrets, which has led to a whole rule among the brothers.
The Mexico rule.
The Mexico rule.
Yeah.
Which is,
and if you don't know the Mexico rule, I'll give you just
the Mexico rule is simply we don't talk about
Mexico. So they're in their past. Phil ends up in Mexico for a while and is away from the brothers, and things happen in Mexico. He eventually returns.
Are you going to tell us what happens?
No.
Nope.
Damn.
He eventually returns to his brothers, but he refuses refuses to talk about what happens in Mexico. And the cool thing is I have an entire narrative for what happens in Mexico, and I refuse to tell you guys. And I won't tell anybody. But it becomes a thing where we actually had to negotiate terms because the younger brothers asked so many times that we had to negotiate terms and call it the Mexico rule. We do not talk about what happened to Phil in Mexico. And you will hear that come up constantly in the story.
It's led to bloodshed.
It has.
Yeah.
And a dead horse.
What happened in Mexico is Phil's.
Yep.
And it will never be anybody else's, and
I
he will
think-
take that to the grave. And while it becomes this point of humor and sometimes a little drama, it is something that is just his and has shaped who he is when we as the audience meet him.
I think it's also because Phil has gone through what happened in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to prevent the same thing happening with Fart.
Oh, I think he's just genuinely worried about me.
I don't think so.
I
No.
think
You don't know what happened in Mexico. You have no idea what we're trying
But I
to
think
prevent.
he sees in Fart the capacity for something as bad, worse. I think it's
I think
it's Phil trying to prevent that level of regret.
See, Mexico was not that, and I think when it comes to the relationship that I have with Fart is when I was young, I was Fart. Phil was Fart. He was
Absolutely.
on the path of being fastest drawn, kill any man, fight anybody.
Yeah, but he did a lot
to B.
angrier.
But I did, but at the same
There was
time,
less humor in it.
Yeah.
I had to take care of Frank at such a young age that I had to question and stop and restrain
You had
those
to be
feelings
responsible.
because I had to be responsible for and prepare Frank for a harder life because of a lack of sight.
Yeah.
You, Fart, you didn't have any disabilities. So I see in Fart
Well, his disability
where
is
Phil,
no self-control.
Well, it's being a psychopath. But I see myself in
I like to think of it as a perk.
Fart when I was young, and if I did not have Frank, I would have been right down the same path as Fart. And now with age, wisdom, and everything I've gone through, I realize, that is a really bad path.
I also think that at that capacity for, Phil's dynamic with Fart in general, because honestly, like you and I, we are the diametric oppositions where it's eldest versus youngest. It is the wise versus the emotional, outlash. Frank and I, we had time together. We were okay. We did okay. There wasn't really anything big or showy when he was down in Mexico. So you and I, we understand each other well enough, and we're close enough to where it's like, you kind of get me. You still will side with Phil more often than not, obviously because it's the smarter way to go. But there are times where you'll back me, and it's like
absolutely.
where my ideas will hit Phil like a fucking brick wall and a bouncy ball. When I throw them at you, it's a bit more like, I see where you're going, but I don't know, man. We could try that a little bit different. It'd probably work out better. And again, that's where the opposition comes in. So really, on the ends of the spectrum, you and Frank have a great relationship because you were together, you took care of him, you basically raised him. So you two have a fantastic working relationship of trust and understanding of one another that cannot be beat. Me, I'm the youngest, so there's a little bit of bitterness in the respects that I don't have any disability. Technically speaking, I don't need either of you to live on my own, which is weird for, I think, Phil, because although he cares and loves for Fart, and he feels a responsibility to Fart, a part of him also knows that the way he lives right now will lead to an early grave, and a part of him is a little butthurt that he could do that. Because you are a caretaker. and the care you're giving to me is bouncing off of me like a rubber ball off of a brick wall. And it's like, man, fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think that Phil understands that. Like,
Yeah.
he will consistently still drive the point home, and he'll get frustrated and angry, you know, because it's a generational battle. There's enough age between the two that it really feels like the generational battles that we have all lived through and we see in our friends and family, right? But I know that Phil believes you will come to it in your own time and place as long as we continue to reinforce it, like continue to show the examples, to continue to be able to pick you up when you do stumble and go, this is why we've been trying to tell you this for so long, that hopefully one day you make that connection
And it'll click.
because it's about longevity. It's still everything that Phil does, no matter how frustrated he can get with Fart, still comes from a place of this brotherly love and this protection of I don't want him going down a path that puts him 6 feet under.
Well, yeah.
He's my brother and I love him and he's an integral part of this little trio that we have and I cannot give up on him no matter how frustrating it gets.
Well, and the funny thing about Fart, too, is in the respects, like, he always wants to keep an eye out for Frank, too, out of sheer principle, because he can't see. He ain't got no eyes.
And we've discussed this.
So.
I think Fart is almost overprotective of Frank because he knows Frank can handle himself.
Oh, yeah.
But because...
He also knows he's at a disadvantage.
Yeah, and also I think it's an aspect of Fart that he's trying to emulate Phil.
Yeah.
Phil is very protective of his brother.
Yeah, and when you and I were running together by our lonesome, I figured as the character development was I became your eyes.
Yeah.
I became your protector when I believed you couldn't do it yourself. Even though you are very well capable, there's still that mentality of I got to keep an extra strong vigil, which put me on edge. And then when Phil comes back, it's like
that just
some of
went
that
away.
weight. Well, no, some of that weight dropped off, and he was able to still be protective, but not nearly as vigilant.
Yeah.
You know, it's like so long as Phil's there, Fart can relax a little bit more, and he becomes a bit more comfortable.
He's still got one eye on
yeah.
Frank at all times, and it's not out of pity.
No.
It's not. It's just.
It's the same thing that Phil's doing.
Yeah,
This
is my brother,
and it's protection.
Yeah,
yeah. It's I want you to be
even though
safe.
Frank doesn't necessarily need it, Fart's going to do it anyway because that's what Phil would do.
Oh yeah,
and that has been a really neat dynamic too. Is as much as Fart and Phil fight, and damn, do they fight.
They are more alike than they care to admit.
And I know
100%.
that Fart has the utmost respect for Phil, even
Yes.
though he'll stand toe to toe. It's like he aspires to, even though he can't necessarily wrap his head around how to do it the right way.
and honestly, at this rate, he's not entirely certain that he wants to, but a subconscious part of him is like,
What would Phil do?
what would Phil do?
And that is something,
And that's
that
the
we're
ultimate
gonna,
respect for
we are
that
definitely
older
going to play
brother.
with in the future. We've had discussions about
Yeah.
scenes and episodes and things that we
No
wanna play
spoilers,
with.
fucker.
No spoilers. I'm just saying. We are getting ready. We are, as we're recording this, we are 2 weeks away from starting our next arc.
Woo-hoo!
Very excited for this arc. We're going to have a brand new actress in. Very excited to work with her. And it's a story that...
No spoilers, fucker.
Yeah. in fact, let's just say we're starting
We're starting
Frank's
season 2.
arc.
it's
Now-
Frank's art.
Before we get to Frank's arc, because I just want him to listen. I don't want to tease. I don't want anything.
Nope.
But you have to answer the same question. It's like, tell us about Frank and what you brought into it and what you have added to him over the course of what we've done with the audio.
So
drama.
the key with Frank, when we first started playing the game, Frank had sight.
Oh, I remember. It wasn't until you unlocked the bandages.
Yeah, there was a skin that you could do as in the character creation, and I unlocked it or something, and it's just bandages around the eyes.
Bloody bandages.
Yeah, and I put it on, and I just liked the look of it. And I said to you, because it was you and me playing, it's like, what if Frank was blind, but he's still a crack shot? Mm-hmm. And we started developing it. It's almost supernatural the way we play it, and I'm fine with it.
We constantly have been saying all your other senses were heightened.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And Phil worked hard to help you develop all your other senses to almost superhuman capacity.
And there are moments where you see that Frank does rely on his brothers. Especially during physical fights, he will call out and be told where to move,
and you'll still trip over furniture, and you'll still have little moments like
which is
you are still a blind
when he's
character.
Relaxed, but he's not as hyper aware. But when it comes to the fight,
and
he's
again,
on.
this goes back to both Fart, and we haven't seen it with Phil, but I think we might, but. All the brothers love to fuck with one another.
Oh, 100%.
And with Fart, it's easy to do to just leave a chair out or guide him into something. Mm-hmm. But so the idea that making him blind, giving him a disadvantage, especially in the Old West, especially a person on the trail constantly, was a cool challenge. But then we came up with the idea that of the three, he's the most even. He's half of Fart. He's half of Phil.
Yeah.
He's the best and worst of both of them wrapped in one, which is why he is the go-between. He is the one that can translate Fart to Phil or translate Phil to Fart.
Yeah.
In the very first episode we had after Fart kills a man who's just trying to collect on a bounty. He has no idea that the bounty's been cleared. They're fine. Fart kills the man in essentially cold blood, and Phil just can't even with Fart anymore. Mm-hmm. Just
fake news.
But it's Frank that goes to Fart and says, "Look, I know you're the best. We all know you're the best. But there's someone out there who's even better, and one day you're going to run into him."
No, Mama died a long time ago. No.
Your mama killed our papa.
But again, it's
that moment, and going back to while Phil was in Mexico, I think that really solidified for our characters for that time that they were riding, because Phil wasn't there to step in and be angry, so it was like
your foil was me.
Well, and I think Frank talks to Fart in a way that isn't authoritarian, or father-like. It comes from a brother and an equal.
Right.
And I think Fart looks at Frank as an equal, where he looks at Phil as a father figure most times.
Yeah.
Because that's how Phil comes down on
it. Well, and that's his nature too, is it's like you are the parent and I am the dastardly fucking teenager, well, like 20-year-old. But anyway.
But the other thing I wanted for Frank is I wanted him to be the intellectual.
Yeah.
I really wanted to have him be the one who reads books and
introspective,
and
at least
philosophical and things like that. And it actually came out with a joke when we were playing one night during the transition screen. It was like stars, and I was like, "Phil, you ever just look up at the stars?" And your response was, "Fuck no." But it was like I like to think of Frank as a philosophical intellectual who isn't as educated because he can't read.
Right.
Which is where we came up with Phil will read to him, be it books or newspapers, whatever they can find. So Frank is up to date. He knows the bigger words, and Phil out of this has learned words and is a little bit more educated than Fart is. Fart loves the stories. He ain't got time for the facts.
Well, no, and he doesn't give a fat roasty shit about the deeper thought of it. He's like, "No, that was a good story.
Yeah,
cool. What you reading next?"
Yeah, exactly.
He's digesting it like most people digest daytime TV.
So I think
it's just another episode.
We haven't yet really had a chance to explore that facet of Frank, which is why I'm excited for this next arc, because I am hoping that we do get to see a little bit more of that, see a little bit more of
Yeah.
who
And it's
Frank
funny-
is and who he sees himself as being.
I've always seen him, and I think even as we progress, it's going to be the same thing. I think that you're the romantic in the group.
Yeah.
I think that you're the dreamer in the group. I think that because of your lack of sight and not being able to, you don't have points of reference. You just have your other senses, what something smells like, what it sounds like, a flavor, a feel of something. But that your mind has created all of these scenarios, and really you do think a lot. I don't see you so much as an intellectual. I see you again as a romantic, that everything about the world is possibility, and you really think about, like you said, I mean, even though you can't see stars, by asking Phil that's that dreamer in you. It's
Yeah.
like, what does this mean, Phil? What do you think? And Phil's like, fuck, I don't know. It means it's dark. The sun is down. Go to sleep.
It's
right? 'Cause
cold out.
Phil is pragmatic.
Yeah.
Phil has always been forced to be pragmatic. I think he has some of both brothers in him, but he has had to either give up or repress some of those things that make you guys you. And I think it makes him a little wistful. And because he has them in them, or he had them at one time and had to give them up for you. He doesn't regret that. His commitment to you guys, like he'd give up anything for either one of his little brothers, right? His own life if he had to, without hesitation. But I think him as an individual, as a person, he wishes he could be more romantic, and he feeds it to you because he can almost live vicariously through you.
Yeah.
It's why he reads to you, and why you guys have kind of deeper conversations, and you can bring stuff up to Phil that'll make Phil ponder. And I think that the same thing with you. I think that even though he's given you the business, there's part of him that's still proud of you because of what you have become as a man, and that you're capable, and that he doesn't have to protect you much. In fact, he now has to kind of rein it in more than protect you.
And what I've come to realize about our dynamic as the three of us, we are like halves of the brain. You're logical, logistical, well composed, absolutely stoic. I'm the emotional side, the creative side, the eccentric side. I am the emotional nerve fully exposed. Frank is both sides of the brain.
Yeah.
You are a whole
I am the
of
bridge
both of
that
us.
gaps, yeah.
You are a dreamer. You are also logistical. You are philosophical, yet you are cold and calculated. You are thoughtful, introspective, all of these different things of both of us. That's why we butt heads so much, because he's a stoic logic and I'm an emotional raw nerve.
I've always looked at the three brothers like this, that Phil is the boomer, Frank is Gen X,
And I'm the fucking
you're
millennial.
the millennial / Gen Z, right?
Yeah,
it was
man.
like the Gen Xer is kind of this bridge between the boomer and the millennial, because he can speak both. He kind of understands both sides of it.
Son of
But
a
I'm like,
bitch.
you go to work, you buy a house, you have a family, you get fat, you watch TV, you die. And you're like, fuck you, I ain't doing that.
I'm gonna be
go
in a
out and
band.
live. I'm gonna backpack around Europe and form a band, and I'm gonna get tattoos. And you're like, fuck both of you. Jesus Christ, just shut up.
At some point, we're going to have to get Fart to go, okay, boomer. And just
Right.
Phil go, what?
Nah.
but it really is how as simplistically as I can
Yeah.
put it, this is the dynamic that I've kind of looked at between the three of us.
Yeah, it's the
So-
generational gap. But at the same time, I look forward to where we're going to move. I look forward to the stories ahead, because honestly, y'all, we're in for some good shit.
And we'll do this again. We'll do another sort of round table. Maybe,
Probably after your arc.
Yeah, because I'd love to get our new actress.
It'll
in
be a
and-
season
and
2
get a-
wrap up kind of thing.
Yeah, get her point of view after doing this, and
Yeah.
what she thinks, and that sort of thing. It'll be fun. So
So
don't
look
forget
forward
to
it.
like and subscribe. Hit
that bell for notifications.
Say that thing. But
I don't know
Okay,
about
boomer.
that.
And
Just
if
tell
you're
your
new to
friends.
this, literally tell your friends, share it. It's, this is grassroots. We don't have a big marketing thing behind us. We don't have a big organization. This really is just
Bro, we don't get paid.
right. This is just a group of people that really like this story and want to bring it to life because
we're just
we
trying to
enjoy
tell some
it,
fun stories
and we
with
think
some
it's
characters
we
that we like.
think it's a story that you guys might like. So if you're new to this, or go back and go listen to them from the beginning and yeah, again, like, subscribe, let us know, comment in the YouTube ones of your favorite moments or questions about episodes or characters, and we'll keep an eye out and we'll respond to you. But we would love to get this to a larger audience and do more with this. But
It'd be really cool to be paid for it, but we don't care. That's
yeah.
not what we're here for. We're here to tell a good
Never
story and
started
have a
this-
good
I just
time.
wanted to tell a good
Yep.
story
Yep.
about some fun characters.
So for all y'all out there who might actually hear this, it's pretty solid stuff, if I may say so myself. Maybe biased on it, but
just do me a favor, don't ask about Mexico.
oh, that was going to be my next
ask
question.
about it, but just
We don't talk about Mexico.
Thanks for listening.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye.